So, I watched the anime called Elfen 2004 sci-fi. It's one season. It's only 13 episodes, so not too bad if you were looking for a short anime to watch. I really like how it's drawn. The artwork is great. I did really like some of the character development that happened in the anime. There was a couple things I didn't like about it, you know? Before we get into that, though, let me give you a brief overview of it. So, basically, it's about this, I believe she's like maybe 18, 19, like she's young adult, young teen, or old teenager, whatever. Young adult, old teenager girl named Lucy. And she is a Dicloni, which is like basically, they consider it to be almost like an upgraded human. You have like these like invisible arms that come out of your body. You have basically cat-looking ears. They're like bone. You have like horns that stick out of your head. And they look like cat ears. I think those are the only like real characteristics of them. And they're freakishly strong. They're freakishly strong. And they have this like innate desire to like just kill mankind. Probably because they're supposed to be like the next level, you know? Like there's like the lesser apes, you know, gibbons and siamings. And you got the greater apes, you know, the orangutans, chimpanzees, gorillas. And then you got humans, you know? And then you got the Dicloni. It's like the next level shit, right? The point is, Lucy, she grew up mostly in an orphanage because most parents of these Dicloni would abandon their kids, apparently. I think I'm getting this right. They abandon their kids because they're like, oh, you're weird, you got horns and shit. So she ended up at an orphanage, and like one day she just finally had enough. She ends up finally like realizing like her strength and using her invisible arms, and she starts fucking people up left and right. She's like killing people and shit. It's pretty cool. But these scientist bitches end up finding her, and they're like, damn, this is crazy, this is tight. Like, we need to, like, study this shit, you know? We're gonna study the blade. They name her Lucy. So they start, like, doing scientific experiments on her. Well, in the process, she ends up basically infecting with her invisible, like, vector. You find out later in the anime that the doctor, Dr. Kurama, I believe is his name, his daughter ends up catching this virus. So she ends up being just a lab experiment too. Basically, anyone that gets infected with this weird virus that makes you like crazy superhuman, they end up like studying you. They study the blade. You never get to go outside. It's pretty crazy. In the beginning of the film or anime, Lucy escapes from the science lab or whatever. In the process, she gets hit by someone trying to, you know, catch her before she finally escaped. She was like on a cliff, you know? They hit her, she falls off the cliff, and she forgets everything. She's like, doesn't remember what the fuck happened. So she's pretty all fucked up, and she doesn't remember who she is. She can't even talk, actually. Like, she literally can't talk. She's like, duh, like, she doesn't know anything, you know? So these two other characters who are cousins, which we're gonna get into how weird that was in a little bit. Yuka and Kota are cousins that have not seen each other for 8 years. They're now graduated from high school, about to go off into college, and they both are going to move into their parents' or like family-owned restaurant that's currently not being operated in right now, or hotel or some shit. I don't know. They go to live there. They're walking on the beach, and they run into Lucy, and she doesn't know who she is. She doesn't know shit. So they take her back to the house. She ends up like being there. She's gonna live with them. The only word she's ever able to say is Niu, N-Y-U, new. So that's like all she says. New. Everything's new. It's kind of cute. There's a lot of weird like naked scenes and shit that seem really unnecessary. I mean, you know, not that I'm like opposed to like adult naked stuff. There's a weird like love triangle going on between Yuka and Kota and Niu. So Yuka is like in love with her cousin. I don't know if I'm really down with that shit. That kind of threw me off on the anime. But she starts getting really butthurt that Niu's always in the way. She's always getting naked and throwing her tits in Kota's face. I'm not joking. This shit actually happened. Kind of a weird story. I don't know if I should be happy or weirded out. I'm pretty much weirded out. So as she's slowly like just like now she's living outside of the science lab and shit, and getting more familiar with like the outside world, going in and out of her weird personality and shit, she starts to slowly like admire, more or less, I guess is the right word, Kota. And she feels like this strong connection to him. You find out Kota had a very tragic event happen to him. When he went to go visit his cousin when he was like 8 or 9 years old, his dad and his sister were murdered right in front of him. at one point, before Lucy was taken hostage, more or less, I guess, by the science bitches, she went on like kind of like a weird killing spree. Like she was going on a crazy killing spree, just killing families and then just living in their house until the cops found it. And then she'd bounce and then go live in another house. Like she started going nuts. She was at this festival that Kota was at with his cousin, and they're leaving. She's getting all pissed off, you know, doing her normal I'm fucking mad Lucy shit, you know, slicing people up. Lucy happens to see Kota and his cousin with each other. And what she sees is the cousin giving him a hug saying, I don't want you to go back home. I want you to live here forever, all this shit. And then she gets real pissed and she just starts slicing people up. Basically, everything goes crazy at the carnival, right? So the dad is like, hey, we gotta get the fuck out of here, you know? Let's get on the next train home. So they leave, and all of a sudden, Kota's sister walks into like the other train cab, whatever it's called, and Lucy's there. And she looks all pissed off and shit. And then Kota's like, oh shit, Lucy, what up, dog? Like, I didn't see you at the carnival, you know? Did you show up? Dude, Lucy is the one that murdered Kota's sister and dad way back in the mad 80s. But he was so fucked up from it, he didn't remember. He didn't remember that it was her. So now he sees her like 8 years later. He's an adult. You know, they pick this bitch off the beach, you know, with the cat horns and shit. And they're like, whatever, we'll take her in. We'll accept her, you know. Crazy, right? I can't remember what happens with her, honestly. I kind of got lost at the end of this anime. But she ends up, like, going away. I'm pretty sure that Kota and his cousin thought she got captured. You know, she was gone. And then it fast forward, like, a couple weeks later. They're eating. And then all of a sudden, you hear a knock at the door. And it ends with a shadow, a figure you can assume is Lucy coming back to see Kota. So it's like, damn, does Kota ever end up getting with his cousin? Or does he end up getting with this Lucy chick, you know? I don't think he's going to end up with Lucy. I hope he doesn't end up with his cousin. So it was a pretty crazy story. Lots of like weird, bizarre love triangle shit going down with cousins and horned cat ladies. You know, the coolest thing I liked about this anime though was it was really fucking brutal. I liked all the brutal shit. What I didn't like was like the unnecessary underage like kids not having clothes on. I wasn't down with that at all. I didn't like that at all. I don't need to see that shit. Honestly, I was a little disappointed with the anime. I was hoping it would be better than it was. And I'm about to give it the lowest score I've ever given an anime that I've watched so far. I'm going to give Elfen Lied a 4 out of 10. Basically, I don't really recommend watching it. It's weird, you know? I couldn't move past all the weird, unnecessary children shit, you know? I don't need that. Get out of here. Glad I didn't watch this one then. Yeah, honestly, like, you really didn't miss out on much. Like, if you like the gore stuff, like, that's cool. But I don't know if it was necessarily worth watching every single episode for, like, just a couple good ones, you know?